and transition. And I'm really excited to have a panel today with all about kind of undergraduate research. And so we have a staff member from undergraduate research, a faculty who is a great faculty member who has worked with transfer students, and then a transfer student researcher. So we really hope that you get a lot out of this, that you have a chance to ask a lot of questions. And then the way that we'll do this is when you want to speak in person, you will come up here. And then when Heather, our student presenter, wants to talk, she can do so. So we'll start with everyone introducing themselves. So Dr. Toth, you want to go ahead?
Oh, hi, I'm Christy Toth, and I'll hold my breath and pull this down so in case you all see me around and want to say hi, you'll know who I am. So I'm Christy Toth. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric Studies, and I'll talk some about my research in a second, but I guess it might be useful to know that a lot of my research relates to transfer students and their writing experiences across institutions. Oh wow, does that go any higher? That might be it. I'm okay with. It's all right. Yeah, we can work with it. So I've done a lot of that research collaboratively with transfer student research assistants over the years. So I get this kind of saying I'm not just the president of Hair Club for Men, I'm also a member. But yeah, we can chat more about that work in a second.
Thank you, Dr. Toth. Sandra, you want to introduce yourself?
Everyone, I'm Sandra. I work as an advisor in the Office of Undergraduate Research. So we help students with any and all things related to undergraduate research.
And then Heather, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, my name is Heather. My pronouns are she, they. I am a transfer student from Salt Lake Community College to the University of Utah, and I'm doing my bachelor's degree in writing and rhetoric studies. And I've been working on an undergraduate research project I did 2 semesters and then got a scholarship to do a 3rd. So that's me, hi.
Thank you so much, Heather. And so the format for this, just want to keep it free flowing. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat or in person. And so this is going to be the format. Sandra, we'll talk about kind of undergraduate research, opportunities there. And then we'll have Dr. Toth talk about kind of what's it like working with students from the faculty perspective, any guidance or tips she has. And then Heather will talk about what's it like to be a student. And please feel free to ask questions. So Sandra, you want to start us off?
Sure. All right. So there's like a lot I could talk about our office, all of our programming and resources, and just undergrad research in general. So what I can do that would be most helpful is just kind of share a really quick overview of some of the things that our office does do, kind of take you around our website so that everyone knows where to look for things as they need to. So I'm gonna share the screen real quick. So undergrad research is a really awesome way for students to put what they're learning in classes into hands-on experience. Oftentimes, if you're interested in going to grad school, med school, any kind of future education beyond undergraduate, research is not only recommended, but required for admission into certain programs. And it's just a really awesome way to figure out what you like, what you don't like. And as an undergrad at an R1 institution, there's so much awesome research happening at the University of Utah. I would say one really cool place to kind of keep your eye on is on our events tab. We have a bunch of workshop series similar to the transfer workshop series, but more related to like undergraduate research in general, all the skills related to being a great researcher on campus. And we also have our symposium pages. I think the really cool thing about having been virtual this whole past year is that everything lives online now. So if you scroll to the bottom of the page, we archived this past year's. And if you're interested in seeing what other students have done or like what kind of projects are happening on campus, I would say just take a quick look through this. oftentimes undergrads think that the research they're doing is not super involved. And I think that is a myth. Like a lot of undergrad research are really, really involved in the kind of work that they're doing with their faculty mentors. And a lot of these students have done a lot of really awesome work on campus. So I would say if you're not entirely sure what you're interested in doing, or you just kind of want to see what other students have been up to, this is a really cool place to kind of look through. And if you find a project that sounds really interesting, like Twitter and revolutionary discourse in Ukraine's revolution, you can reach out to the faculty mentor who's listed on this project and just see if this is something that you could get involved in. So I would say this is a really awesome place to keep your eye on. We also have a bunch of resources for when you do get involved with research. We have travel and small grants and funding to help make all of your research work possible. We have UROP, which is a program where we pay you a $1,200 stipend throughout the duration of a semester to do your research work, because oftentimes the work that an undergrad will do on campus is going to be volunteer-based, just because faculty mentors don't have enough funding to pay students to be a part of their projects. And Heather mentioned that they've been a part of UROP. They're on a third semester through a special scholarship of ours. So this is something that I would highly encourage students to look into doing once you're involved in a project and once you have a faculty mentor lined up. And we also have the summer program for undergraduate research. So if, like during a normal academic school year, maybe you're finding a little bit of difficulties working research into your schedule, the summer is a really great time to explore research and to kind of figure out if that is what you want to do. Research is always happening on campus. So there's never like a specific time frame that you have to abide by to get involved. And SPUR is a intensive 10-week research experience through our office. You work 35 to 40 hours a week. The project list and applications will go live around November 1st. So just keep an eye on this webpage if doing research over the summer is something that you're interested in. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so for SPUR, so are there like already research projects that you then join in on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so how SPUR works is we'll get applications from faculty mentor, we'll organize through them, and then come November 1st, we're going to update this page with all of the projects where faculty mentors are looking to recruit for students to join their labs. And then when you apply to SPUR, you list your top 3 projects. And then the faculty mentors will review those applications and figure out who they would like to bring on for the summer. And there are also many other research programs happening across the University of Utah, not just our office. If anyone is interested in like chemistry, physics and astronomy, atmospheric sciences, material science and engineering, I think those are a few other departments that also have summer research programs. So I would say just look around different department web pages and see what kind of information is available for this summer. But that was a lot of information about our office, and I'd be more than happy to help answer any questions. But for now, that's just a really quick overview of some of the things that we do.
Thank you, Sandra. And so next we'll have Dr. Christy Todd talk about being an amazing faculty member.
All right, well, this is my 7th year at the University of Utah, and I've been working with undergraduate researchers really since my first year on campus. So I guess one thing that's cool about being in the position I'm in now is that I've had a chance to work with students through a bunch of the different kinds of programs and opportunities that you just heard about through UROP. And so I've worked with students who got UROP grants because they were working on research projects that they were designing, developing. They needed a faculty mentor to sort of, be a guide on the side while they pursued their projects. Often these were projects that emerged out of projects they did in a class they took with me, and that's why they asked me to be a faculty mentor. But if you have a research project that you get started in your own classes, this can be, and it's something that you think you could keep building on, because we all know, like, the end of the semester, it's always, you're doing the best you can at the end of an intense term, but you can keep building it. So I've worked with students on projects like things like, research on using social media to increase voter engagement in small Utah town governments. A student did a project on intergenerational Filipino American rhetorics and literacies, the way that people were talking, women in particular, Filipino American women were talking to each other across generations. Projects on using podcasting to promote gender inclusive parenting and teaching. Students doing really cool projects about things I don't actually have deep expertise in necessarily, but I could support them as they developed their own research projects. I've also worked with a number of students who got Europe grants, sometimes for multiple semesters, to work with me as co-researchers on my projects that I'm leading, most of which have related in one way or another to transfer student writing experiences. And those positions were, students in that role were particularly important for me because everybody was bringing knowledge and experiences and a lot of skills to the table that I don't necessarily have or possess. And so we're really essential collaborators on that research. I also had one summer had 2 students that were in the SPUR program that worked on that project full time. And just to give you a sense of the kinds of things that over the years that being involved with that project has meant for students, students helped design surveys and interview protocols, like the kinds of questions we were asking in interviews. They actually did interviews with a bunch of transfer students. They transcribed interviews. We analyzed those interviewed transcripts together qualitatively. And then we moved into presenting our findings, right? So we presented to different entities on campus. We went to conferences all over the country, places like Las Vegas, Houston, Portland, Reno, Boulder, Pittsburgh. I'm taking the book that we've been writing together is coming out this spring, and we're all going to go to Chicago to one of the big conferences to release the book. But I've written articles and now this book that's coming out with undergraduate transfer student co-researchers on the project. And Heather is part of the current instantiation of our research team. And right now we're working on developing web content that's a kind of companion to the book. It's involved lots of different kinds of writing, lots of different kinds of research. Many students who've been involved with me as co-researchers went on to have other kinds of roles in our projects, like they got to be TAs or co-researchers with me, or sorry, co-teachers with me and other faculty in our department. They've sometimes been like co-program coordinators, so helping run the support programs that came out of the research that they developed. So, research was in some ways kind of a way into having a range of other roles on the projects that we have. But I've also had a lot of students working on these projects who weren't funded through Europe grant specifically, but were working with me for a semester for basically undergraduate research credits that counted towards the major. So sometimes you can do this for credit. Sometimes you can do it for credit and get paid. So certainly as we got more grants over the years from foundations outside the university, I've been able to pay students not through Europe, but through our own grant funding. And at least for me, one of the things that I learned over time and became really important is trying to create a bunch of different flexible kinds of opportunities to be involved in undergraduate research on our team, because I know that some of the students that we've worked with, they want to be involved, but they can't necessarily make the time commitments that some of the more structured programs require, or they need more flexible schedules. And I at least really try to have people involved in the ways they can be, based on their schedules and other obligations, because their perspectives are so important to have as part of the project. So Paul asked me to maybe talk about a couple of, I'm happy to answer questions anybody has about the projects or what we've done, but just a couple of tips for if you're interested in getting involved in undergraduate research and aren't totally sure how to connect with a faculty member. Most of the students that I've worked with, every once in a while I hear from a student who found out about the programs we do through something like Europe. But most of the students I've worked with are people that have either had in classes or I've connected with while they were still at Salt Lake Community College and they got involved in our transfer bridge programs, or who have told me that they're interested. And sometimes I can say, great, you want to start next week? And sometimes it's, I don't have the capacity to bring anybody on that semester, but then something opens up the following semester and that's somebody I think of and reach out to see if they're still interested and available. So I would say like my number one piece of advice is if you have a professor in a class whose work is really interesting to you, or you see somebody give a talk or a lecture, or you in some way hear about research that's going on, going and talking to that faculty member and letting them know. I mean, I know it sounds awkward. I'm as a socially awkward person, I find it awkward to approach people and fangirl a little bit. But it's like, we love hearing that people are interested in our work, and it may not always translate into an opportunity. Then that's largely just a function of limited resources on our part, not because we don't like you, but certainly the people that I brought on the team are people who told me, oh, I'm interested in what you're doing, or I want to be a teacher, or I want to be involved in research, or I'm really interested in this area of policy that relates to what you do. And when I can see connections between their goals and the kinds of things that we're doing, that's often who I then reach out to. Just a couple of other thoughts I had about this is, so you don't, I know sometimes research seems like this lofty thing and you're like, I don't really want to be a researcher, so I don't really want to get involved in research. And I would say that most of the students that have worked with me on my projects, they're not, at least at this point in their lives, going on to be researchers. They're interested in the subject matter for some reason, and there's a lot of reasons why being involved in the research can be a valuable opportunity, even if going into research or being a professor or even going on to grad school isn't something that you think you want to do, at least right now. I know many of the students that have worked with me on my research team, I get to know them really well. I'm able to be a reference when they apply for jobs after graduation. I'm able to write them letters of recommendation for grad school or for other jobs and opportunities on campus. Sometimes students have worked with me for a semester and then they've heard about research projects elsewhere on campus or other jobs on campus that are actually more closely related to their personal interests. And I'm able to write them letters of recommendation or help them make connections to those positions. But there's a lot of ways in which we get to know you really well if you work with us in a research capacity that we might not necessarily get to know you in classes, and that enables us to help support you as you move in to other areas and opportunities. I would also say that I am often looking for students on my research team who bring experiences I don't have that are really important insight, and also who bring skills that I don't have. Like, Heather will talk about, Heather's been doing a lot of the work on developing the web content is the companion to our book. And I mean, I could do some of that, but Heather certainly has more experience and a lot of valuable insight about how to design a website well. So I'm grateful to have some of that expertise. I'm also like a terrible event planner. I hate event planning, and I've had students on the team over the years who've been much better at that sort of thing. So it's not just that we're in a capacity to mentor you. You all are making really important, valuable contributions to our teams in a lot of cases, in all kinds of different ways. So I guess, the last thing I would say is that when we did the first, way back at the beginning of our transfer research team work back in like 2015, 2016, we interviewed like 50 students across campus, all transfer students from different institutions who were fairly new to the U, and some of whom had been here for about a year, year and a half, about their experiences transitioning to writing at the U. And one of the really remarkable findings out of that research is that some of the students who had the most engaging writing experiences, who talked about learning the most about writing after they transferred to the U, were involved in undergraduate research. Students sometimes talked about, oh, this class, we wrote this paper and it was helpful, but like the students who were really like on fire and passionate about writing had been involved in writing with faculty on these research projects. So it was really clear that particularly for transfer students, it can sometimes be difficult because you're new to make those connections with faculty, but the benefits of being in that kind of role are, even, potentially bigger than they would be for students who've been on campus for a few years and have made other kinds of connections. So I just really encourage you all, if you're interested and have opportunities or meet faculty whose work seems cool, to take the leap and make those connections, because it's a learning opportunity where you're sort of firing on all cylinders. So I'm happy to answer questions too, but I'll turn things over to Heather now.
All right, hi. Okay, cool. I wanted to make sure I could just go. For me as a transfer student, as Dr. Toth mentioned, I've worked with her on her project for a couple of semesters now, and that's been really cool. It was just one of those things where like I was interested in what she was working on, and so I asked how I could help and what I could do kind of thing. And then I've had a really great experience working with her and with the team on the different aspects of her research. With the UROP part that I've done of undergrad research, as Dr. Toth had mentioned, sometimes people take her bridge class, the Writing 3030, and find inspiration in there to do research. And I'm definitely one of those people. In her class, we did a project about, personal literacies in communities. And I found myself falling down rabbit holes, looking into this particular community that I was learning the literacies of and talking about how I did, and started to wonder about how other people had also learned the literacy of the community of the, in this case, it was the LGBTQ community. And so I had mentioned that I wanted to look into it more. I actually think Christy was just like, like you've fallen down these rabbit holes and you can probably put that information you're learning somewhere. So I had spoken to my advisor, Lisa Shaw, and she suggested I reach out to one of the advisors in Transform with the gender studies. And I reached out there and was connected with a faculty member who has done a lot of really cool research into similar areas that I was working. And I got set up, I did a proposal, did the application, all of that stuff to see if I could get approved for the UROP program. And I was able to do that, and then got to work with that faculty member who has just tons and tons of connections that I was able to utilize and to get to know in the college and in the area that I'm doing research. And it was really, really cool. And like, I, went through like training to do the, to be able to do surveys, and you have to go through some steps for that. But it was really cool learning about like the things you can and can't do when you're doing research and why you can and can't do them. And getting to like survey people and talk to people within the LGBTQ community about their own journey of representation and literacy, and how they found the words to describe their identities and what that meant for them, what that means for them. So it's something I was passionate about, and the more I learned about it, the more passionate I became. And working with the different faculty members and the connections that my faculty mentor had really like helped me explore that a lot more and look for research and that had already been done, synthesizing the data and making posters and doing all that stuff. I got to present virtually at a couple of conferences, and I definitely like gained some confidence on presenting. I'm still not great at presenting, as you could tell, but gained some confidence there, and also just learned a lot about the area that I was doing research in for my own self. I think that the more I learned, like I kind of started with like, I have some stake in this conversation. And the more I learned with doing my research and talking to other people and working with the people that I worked with, the more stake I found for myself in that space. And the more I got to learn about the different resources that I could use to learn. The workshops are so helpful, not just for like how do I do this thing with my research project, but like writing a synthesis and a reflection paper and a research paper, like those kind of things. The microaggressions workshop, all of those things, like I could apply directly to what I was working on, but also apply to my other classes and apply to just other things that I've been doing. And so it's been super. And it looks, you always, it looks great on your resume, and it does, it totally does. But it also just is really great. Like going to the different like virtual conferences and listening to other people talk about their research. There were definitely people that I emailed afterwards and were like, tell me more, give me more, because this is really cool. Yeah, so that's kind of my journey there as a transfer student. Like sometimes we arrive at the U from SLIC where we're kind of comfortable, and we know what's going on around us and we know people, and then we end up at the U and it's huge and kind of scary and intimidating, and we don't really know where anything is or who anyone is. But being able to do the research, be part of like Christy's research team, and then the UROP stuff, like being able to like know where things are and who people are and put names to faces, has actually made that like experience of being a transfer student a lot better for me. Like I don't feel like I'm just like kind of hanging out, just doing classes, trying to get through, you know. I feel like I'm part of the university, which sometimes transfer students don't get that opportunity to do that. Yeah, and that's my spiel about my experience with it. It's been great. It's been great working with Christy. It's been great working with the Europe people. They're awesome. And I think one of the coolest things is I got to do research on the Hill, which was one of the programs that they do through the UROP, where you're essentially presenting your research to our legislative branch, our people at the Capitol Hill. We did it kind of weird because it was in pandemic. My entire UROP experience has been in pandemic times, so it was probably a little different than you might get not in pandemic, but it was so really cool to be able to like connect with people who are making policies and be like, this is what I'm researching and this is why it's important that you guys should know this. And so that was really, really cool to get to be part of that. And I applied for the D scholarship. They did, you know, like a third semester, and I applied for that and was granted that scholarship to do one more semester of my research. So I've been looking at ways to take the research I've done over the last 2 semesters and the little bits here and there before from when I was falling down rabbit holes in Christy's class, taking it in this additional semester to like flesh it out even more and find new ways to frame the information to make a difference. So, yeah.
Thank you. And so I really appreciate everyone's comments, and well, this is now the time for kind of Q&A. So if you're in person or online, feel free to ask questions to Heather or the other 2 presenters, Sandra and Dr. Toth. Any questions right now? Yes.
So I know that UROP normally covers a full year, so 2 semesters. So as a graduate, do you get more funding since it's an undergraduate program, or should you just wait till like your junior, like spring junior, so you can do spring junior, fall senior for research?
So the question was, because it's like 2 semesters, and then in Heather's case, you can apply for a third. When do you recommend doing that? Sandra's here to answer.
Okay, sorry, you said something as a graduate.
Well, because like this is an undergraduate research, so like, I mean, I know you would have to do it pretty much for a graduate.
Mhm.
So I'm saying like for it to be funded, because the 3rd semester is not guaranteed, would you suggest like looking now and then like finding something for your spring semester of your junior year?
Yeah, I would, because with the 3rd semester, how that works is that the scholarships will go out to all UROP students who are currently like that, or let me back it up. So we have scholarships that are basically offered every spring, just depending on how much donor money we get. And then whoever is in UROP for that spring will get an email like, hey, if you're in your 2nd semester, these scholarships are open for you. And that 3rd scholarship has to basically be immediately after your 2nd one. And so if you will be graduating soon, you wouldn't be eligible for that 3rd scholarship because you have to be an undergrad to participate in our programming. So it's best if you're thinking about doing UROP and you're interested in applying for that 3rd scholarship semester, to plan it where you can get it all done before you graduate. So just depending on what timeline works best for you and what fits for you, and keeping in mind that you do need to be like an undergraduate student still.
A related question.
Uh-huh.
does doing spur, right,
Yeah.
so the summer,
Mhm.
affect your eligibility for like 2 semesters of Europe?
Not at all. Spur is
Okay.
completely different from UROP. And I think the really cool thing about getting involved with Spur is that oftentimes those are projects that students want to continue working on. And so you've had a really great experience with your faculty mentor that summer. You talk with them at the end and you're like, hey, I'm really interested in continuing to do this in fall. Could I stay on? What would that look like? And oftentimes faculty mentors do want to keep students around. And then that way, when you know ahead of time, we've had a lot of students this past year in Spur also work on their UROP applications while they were doing Spur with their faculty mentors. And then they did UROP. They filled out the application together. And then like students have been funded for UROP the following fall. So it's like a really great way to set up a project and to continue bringing that onto the rest of your academic school year if that is a project that you really enjoy working on.
And there's also summer Europe where it's not the full-time experience, but you like, if you want to be working part-time through the summer, I've had Europe students year round in, you know, it's this thing you can do in summer too.
Okay.
Okay, there's also a question in the chat. Do you have to find a faculty member to work under? Or what if you have an idea of your own you'd like to research? I can answer this from like our office perspective. So to be eligible for any of our resources or programming, you do need to be doing research with the faculty member. And oftentimes, you know, faculty mentors just have the expertise, they have the knowledge, they have the resources for you to get involved with their project. And what I've seen is that a lot of students will kind of join a faculty member's project and they're super, super interested in the kind of work that they're doing. They'll do work for like a semester or two, gain some experience, and then they kind of want to take their own, come up with their own project, and then that faculty mentor will help them carry it out. So there's a lot of advantages to working with the faculty member. And I'm not sure what your perspective is like in terms of students being required to work with the faculty mentor, but at least from our office, it is a requirement for all of our resources and programming.
I would maybe just,
Sorry.
sorry, Heather, you go ahead and then.
I was gonna say, for me, I had the idea of what I wanted to research, and I looked to see if any of the, like the ones that were listed, of teachers that are faculty that were looking for students, if anything was close, and there wasn't anything that was quite where I was what I was wanting to do. So I reached out, like I said, to the advisors at Transform because I felt like that's where my fit. And then told them about my idea of what I wanted, and then they helped connect me to a faculty member. And then I had to do a proposal to that faculty member, talk about what I wanted to do and like make that connection of my own idea that I wanted to do. But I had to connect with a faculty member and then make the next step was applying with that faculty member with me. So that I could get involved with Europe that way. But mine was, I had the idea that I wanted to do. And so I had to like pitch it and do a proposal and do all of the like reaching out to find a faculty member, which the advisors were really great at helping me find that person. But I did have to take that step for myself to find a faculty member who would be interested in working with my idea and basically mentoring me through it. So that was how that worked on my end.
And I would just add to that, that I think maybe this is something that varies by discipline a little bit, in the sense of if you're doing something that involves lab science, like that requires a lab, right? Which requires a faculty member or a team that's running a lab. If you're more in the humanities or in some kinds of social science research that isn't requiring a whole lab apparatus, that's sometimes I think more amenable to, you know, what Heather's describing of, you know, I have this project I want to do, and I'm looking for, I need a faculty mentor who's sort of kind of like an independent study, helping me, meeting with me regularly, helping me figure out how to craft the proposal, making reading suggestions, giving me feedback on the writing that comes out of it. But it is a student directed and designed project with mentorship, as opposed to contributing to the faculty member's research project. But so I've worked, like I said, worked with students in both those capacities.
For like your own research, right? That like you kind of know at least kind of what you want to do, right? Or that you want to focus in a specific area, and maybe there isn't a faculty member that is doing that like particular intersection of what you're looking at. How thorough of an idea or like fleshed out of an idea do you kind of need or should have before you kind of like approach that faculty member?
I mean, and you know, maybe Sandra also has thoughts on this. I would say that from my perspective, you know, these things are always emerging from conversations. And as a faculty member, I think it's always great to be talking early because, you know, it's one thing to kind of sit on your own thinking about this and getting as far as you can based on what you've already been exposed to at this point versus talking to one of us that can help, you know, bounce back and forth and help you move your thinking along and point you to other resources. So I'm personally, I've talked to students who are like, I'm interested in this broad thing, and we can talk about like what some different possibilities out of that might be. Sometimes students come with something that's more fully developed, but I would, my own perspective would be talking to somebody, particularly if you think it's somebody that you think might be a good mentor sooner rather than later. And I would maybe just add to that I've had a number of students who came to me saying, I really love this work I've been doing in your class on this paper I've been writing. I'd really like to do a year op. I'd like to be involved with this. And they came in like the end of November, because by then we were at the point in the semester where they were really excited about stuff. And then we've missed the deadline at that point for year op funding for the coming year. So I would really encourage you all, if you're thinking about this as something you might want to do next semester, like now is really the time to be having those conversations with people, because it's always a bummer when somebody's excited, but they've missed the deadline for applying for the next summer's year op cycle or next semester's year op cycle. So another reason to be talking to somebody early rather than sitting on it until you think you've got it worked out perfectly is so that you can be developing that proposal well in advance of the deadline for the year ops. Because I've also been on the selection committee for the College of Humanities for who gets, you know, when those year op proposals come in and deciding who gets those awards, who gets funded and who doesn't get a year op position. It's become more competitive in the time I've been here, right? Because more people are applying and then, you know, the funds are not unlimited. You can definitely see the difference between somebody who put together a proposal largely on their own without a lot of faculty feedback, like right before the deadline, versus folks who really were working on it 6 weeks or more in advance and had an opportunity to get a lot of faculty input on those proposals. So it's not, the proposals are actually, they involve like a literature review. You know, you really have to like show where your project is situated within studies that have already been done and be able to explain your methods. And so it's not the kind of application that you can do the night or even like a week before the deadline. And because faculty also need to write a recommendation for you, you know, there's I don't ever want my students to submit a year op application cold. They haven't, you know, shown me a draft and we've had a chance to do feedback, because it's a genre that's new for most undergrads, but you know, we've seen lots of them and we've put lots of proposals together, and we can, you know, that's a kind of writing instruction in itself, right? Is learning how to write that kind of proposal.
When I approached the faculty member that I finally did, that who became my mentor, my idea was still kind of loose. Like I knew I wanted to go in a direction, or I thought I wanted, here's where I want, this is what I want to find out. And then talking with that mentor, we kind of like framed it well and, you know, made it tight for us to put into a proposal. So like there's room for the conversation to happen around it. Like I said, I had an idea, and then that mentor, because of their connections, their experience, and the resources that are available, helped me to like see what I was wanting, what I wanted to know, see the different ways to get there, and frame my proposal and my project to use those resources in ways that I probably wouldn't have thought about if I was just doing it on my own. So I think that the question of like how fleshed out does it need to be when you first start talking to a faculty member as a mentor, I think it can be pretty loose at that point, because they're able to help you have that conversation to tighten it up and to make it really well framed and give it good direction. And in the conversations I had with my mentor, I thought like things came out of that I hadn't considered, and that became part of what I was doing. Like initially, I wasn't thinking much about representation and how representation also affects that like cultural literacy. And she kind of brought that into the scope of things. And so it helped it helped flesh it out. So I had that idea, but the teacher, the mentor, helped me like flesh it out and make it something that was a good proposal and a good project. So I think that having just like kind of an idea and being willing to have a conversation really is like the big thing, I think, from my perspective there.
Thank you everyone for your great questions and answers. Make sure. As Dr. Toth said, now is the time to be working on this. This is why we did this workshop at this time. So I want to promote that this was intentional in terms of having you not miss the deadline, like Dr. Toth said. Some quick questions I have. So for Heather, is there anything that you wish you knew earlier, or if you knew it would help you prepare as you started your undergraduate research?
I think the thing I wish I had known earlier was just that those workshops were available, because those workshops were so helpful, and I didn't know that they were there at first. You know, like when I learned that they were there, I was like, okay, I know I have to do 2 of these. I'm required to do 2 of them, but I didn't make it a priority until I finally went to like one of the ones I had to do. And I was like, these are all amazing. Why was I not doing all of them? Like, you're required to do 2 each semester, but like you can do more, and you should totally do more, because they're so helpful. And I wish I had known it sooner, how helpful the workshops were, so that I had like been more eager to like look at them and do those workshops, instead of just, oh, I have to do these before the end of the semester and miss out on being able to attend more of them and to learn more. My second semester, I did like 4 or 5 of them, because I was like, no, these are so good, I have to do another one. So like definitely make sure to like look at those workshops, because yeah, I wish I had known to pay more attention to them earlier. So I think that was my biggest thing.
No, thank you. And then one more question for you, Heather. You kind of touched us on this when you talked, but what are some of the things that you gained from doing undergraduate research that you might not have expected you would have learned going into it?
I think the confidence in doing these sort of presentation things. I mean, like I said, I was in a pandemic year of working, so we didn't actually go to any cool like conferences to present. It was all like digital presentation, and there's definitely different things to do when you're doing a digital presentation from, you know, what you would do in person. And so I learned like a certain like bit of confidence that I didn't have in talking on Zoom things. I'm pretty sure like 2 years ago, I would never have done this panel. I'd have been like, no, I don't want to, I'm not going to talk to people. Like, no, can't do it. But here I am. And I've done a bunch of digital things with Christy's, Dr. Toth's research presentations in the same way that I definitely would not have done if I hadn't done this UROP. It helped me learn how to feel more comfortable doing these, even when I ramble and feel like I'm just talking like crap, you know, not like actually making sense. Still ends up working. And then just knowing the different resources that are available for like learning stuff. You know, the library has great resources for like even just keeping track of your research, your bibliography, or your works cited. Like there are programs that can help you keep track of all of that. There are other resources the library has that, like I said, these things that I learned in these workshops were helpful in all of my classes. Like I find myself like going back to notes that I took when I was watching one of the workshops, using those in, you know, my senior seminar class when I'm working on stuff, learning where to go to talk to people for for anything. I also work up at the Chronicle there at the U and like writing for the arts desk. Sometimes I have to talk to people, and now I know different places to go and ways to talk to people because of doing the research. So I definitely learned things doing UROP and working with Dr. Toth that like I use all the time, and will probably continue using even after I've graduated.
Thank you, Heather, and I'm definitely appreciate you being here today and agreeing to do it. So thank you for that part as well. So we have just a few minutes left. I think a question for the audience and virtual and in person. Are you ready to do undergraduate research? Are you ready to apply? If you have a question, this is the time to ask the question. We have a great group of, faculty, staff, and a student. So if you feel like you're ready to apply to undergraduate research, I'm super happy for you. But if you feel like you have some concerns or questions, please tell us right now. And Sandra has something to say.
Real quick, I know sometimes like finding research opportunities can be a little bit intimidating. Definitely reach out to faculty that you've taken classes from, look at department web pages to kind of see what projects are happening. And I would also say, oh, I gotta share this real quick. Take a look at our research opportunities database. If you're not familiar with this, on our homepage, if you scroll to the very bottom, there's a link that takes you to the research opportunities database. And this is something where faculty submit open positions to us, and they're looking exclusively for undergraduate students. So you don't have to worry about whether or not like you have to be a grad student or have a lot of research experience to get involved. This is a really great place to start. It's not exhaustive by any means, and it kind of just comes in whenever faculty have any positions to submit to us. So we kind of update this as regularly as we can. It just depends on like the semester, what positions are available right now. But if you want some place to like start looking into what kind of research opportunities are at the U, I would say take a look at this page. There's a lot of great information on here. It tends to be a little bit more STEM heavy, but that's not to say that there's not research happening in like the humanities or social sciences or anything. So that's just one place I would say to get started. Oh.
Do you have to like start at the beginning of the semester, or can you start halfway through?
You can start research whenever you want. I think that's a really cool thing about research at the U. And just because there's so many moving parts and pieces when faculty members are doing research, like maybe they have had their plans all lined up for fall semester, and then a student ends up leaving the lab and they're looking for new students like halfway through the semester. I think it's a little bit, it might be a little bit easier if you started reaching out at the beginning of a semester, just because professors aren't as busy then, or like they kind of have a better plan for what the semester is going to look like, or they might even be planning for the next semester in advance. But you can start research whenever you want. You can reach out to faculty members whenever. It kind of just depends on your own time schedule and like when you would want to get started. But definitely the sooner the better if you want to find something for like this upcoming semester.
And I would maybe just add in terms of the intimidation factor that like, I think most of us as faculty know that undergraduate researchers are new to this kind of work, and we don't expect you to already know how to do the stuff that we're doing in our lab. So if you're like looking, I mean, I'm looking at some of these titles and I'm like, whoa, I have no idea what that would mean. You don't already have to know how to do this kind of research to be assisting. We know that that's part of what the experience is that we're part of what we're doing is teaching you in a real hands-on way how to do some of the kinds of work that we do. Like I said, it's great when people bring things I don't know how to do as well, because I'm deeply grateful for it, but also, it's a learning experience for everybody. You don't have to come pre-prepared with how to do different lab techniques or different kinds of qualitative research, or that's part of what this is about.
Yeah, and like this example right here, the professor just wants someone who's comfortable working with patients, interested in the kind of research work they're doing, but there's not necessarily any kind of requirements or prerequisites that this professor is looking for. And I think that's what a lot of faculty mentors are like. They're really open to just working with students who might not have had experience, but are really passionate about the kind of work that they're doing. Yeah. Should I stop sharing?
Thank you, everyone. So I'll just put the link again if you're online to sign in. Any last questions? You're gonna kick yourself if you didn't ask a question you wanted to. So please ask a question if you would like. And then again, if you have any questions, oh, let me put this here. Let me do this here. Let me send this. Okay, sorry. There. So there's the link, and then yes, any last questions, or we're gonna end this meeting. But I really appreciated everyone's experiences and thoughtful questions. Any other questions, anyone? Thank you so much. And then again, I'll put in my email if you have any questions. You can feel free to email me, and then I can send if you want to send me any kind of information, I can send it out to whoever signs up. So I can send the like undergraduate research workshops that were mentioned, and then
Like a full list of some summer program,
Yeah.
research program that they use that I can send you.
and so just keep an eye out for that. That I'll send to everyone who has signed in, and thank you all so much. Have a great